I want to say a vort on Parshas Nitzavim, where talks about pasuk says in Lamed, Kihu chayecha v'arich yamecha. Right, the Torah is our life, the length of our days. So the Gemara in Brachos on Samach Vav discusses a story about how the Romans they made a decree and they prohibited Jews from learning Torah. So Rabbi Akiva he didn't care about this, and he would teach Torah publicly. So a fellow by the name of Papa says, "What do you? It's not smart to do. They're gonna kill everyone who learns Torah." So Rabbi Akiva says, "I'm gonna provide you with the story. This is analogous to a fox who was walking down the road, and what happened was he was walking by a river and he saw a fish, and they were swimming all over the place, and he said, what are you running from?" And he said, "The fishermen, they're coming to get us." So he said, "No problem, come up over here on dry land and we'll take care of you." So the fish said, you think that we were born yesterday? We're not going to do that." He said that you're the most clever of the animals. Come on. So they said that if we're in danger in our natural habitat, so then surely in our natural habitat we're going to be in danger. So Rabbi Akiva said the same thing with us. If we're in danger when we're not learning, when we are learning, so then for sure if we're not learning, we're going to be in tremendous amount of danger. So the Torah is truth. Obviously, it's emes. No, Torah is emes. But do we understand what it's saying here over here? Do we understand? Do we really feel that Torah is like water for us, like fish? That the Torah for us is like when it comes to water for fish. That without it, that we would mamish, it would be complete death. And there's a very interesting Yerushalmi in Shabbos in Perek Zayin that says that if someone pulls a fish from water on Shabbos, liable for kotzer. It's like reaping, like taking out a produce that was done, pulling it from the ground, in addition to probably to killing the fish. But and the idea is because you cut it off from its source of light. That's so too you without Torah. So why are we compared to fish? So the pasuk in Chavachuk, first parak says, "V'taseh adam k'digei hayam," that we are like the fish of the sea. The Gemara says, why are we compared to fish of the sea? So the answer is that just like the fish die when they come up to dry land, so then so too, we're going to have the destruction as soon as we abandon the Torah and the mitzvahs. So we have to feel this way. There's a very interesting vort, which we actually quoted in the recordings in Brachos and Daf Zayin, on Rabbi.com, where that this is the details of the story, Rabbi Pinchas of Polotsk, he went to his Rabbi Devon Lagon, and he wanted haskama for a Perush that he wrote on the Siddur. It's called Magid Tzedek. So in the Vilna Gaon, opened it and he read the commentary on the Adon Olam, which is a nice thing to say, not necessary, but nice to say. So Pinchas wrote there that the reason why we start Shachris with Adon Olam is because Avraham Avinu, we know the Gemara in Brachos Daf Chavav, according to that also, he enacted Shachris. Wow, the whole cheshbon over here. He was Masakin Shachris. And he was the first person, Gemara Brachos again, Daf Zayin, to call Hashem Adon, Master. We find that the Zechus Avos was mentioned in the Beis HaMikdash before the Korban Tamid was brought in the morning. They wanted to see if the time to shech the Korban Tamid arrived. So they said, did the sky illuminate in the east, aka sunrise? Right? Did it illuminate with sunlight all the way up to Chevron? Gemara in Yuma Kaf Ches says. So Chevron is a hint to the Avos who were buried in Chevron. So since we daven Shachris as substitute for the Korban Tamid, so therefore we say Adon Olam, which reminds us of Avraham Avinu at the beginning of Tefillah. That was his whole vort. Very nice, clever idea. So the Vilna Gaon was so impressed by this vort that he said that if this is the entire commentary on the Siddur, just this one idea, then it would be Kedai. It would have been worthwhile. He was so impressed. He said if it was written just for this piece, it would have been worthwhile to publish this. So Rabbi Yoshi Ber Soloveitchik Zatzal asked his father Briskerov. He said, "What could such a small, inconsequential piece of Divrei Torah mean to the Vilna Gaon? who was overflowing with wisdom, with chachmas Torah, with chedushim, to the extent that he didn't even have time to write down his own chedushay Torah because he had so much Torah. He just couldn't write it. It was just too much. What was the Vilna Gaon so impressed with? The Brisker Rav said the Torah is truth. What's the difference whether it's a small truth or a big truth? Every single piece of Torah is precious and it's a reason for joy. And the Medrash teaches us, the Medrash says that just like fish grow in water, but when one drop, is the Bereshis Rabbah in Sadi Zayin, but when one drop falls from above, they accept it with thirst, like someone who never had anything before, someone who never tasted water in his life, so too, Klal Yisrael, when they grow in the waters of Torah, when they hear one new word of Torah, they accept it with thirst, like someone who never heard any Torah in his entire life. So when Rabbi Avohu arrived from the Beis Medrash in Tiberia, the Talmidim Rabbi Yochanan saw his face. Yerushalmi in Shkalim says, Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel. They saw his face shining, and they said to the Rabbi Avohu must have found a treasure. It must be worth billions. What's he shining for? He says, how do you know? So the Talmidim responded, his face is shining. Rabbi Yochanan went to Rabbi Avohu and says, what's the chiddush that you heard recently in the Beis Medrash? So he said, oh, I heard an old Tosefta. I didn't know it before. Rabbi Yochanan then replied, Pasuk in Koheles refers to this situation. In Pereches, Chachmas Adam Tayir Panav. When a person has wisdom, his face starts shining. So how do we fit into all this? Bein Hazmanim. When Bein Hazmanim comes, the Loim de Torah feel like they're being pulled from the water. When we hear a chiddush, is it so precious that we feel like we never heard Torah in our life before? Right, Rabbeinu Yonah, first parak Avos also. Right, the Chacham appreciates the smallest idea, but Kol Mar Masuk, anything that's bitter is sweet to him. But the Tipesh, he says that no, he'll even trample on honeycomb. So what's going on over here? So it says Kiul Chayecha in our pasuk Yarech Yamecha, like we say Markim Chayinu V'Arach Yaminu. It's Mamish our life, the Torah's life. Without it, it's considered like a person not alive. The Rambam talks about it in Hilchos Shmiras HaNefesh, Perek Zayin. Also, it says second parak, Arvos Marba Torah, Marba Chayin. The more Torah a person has, the more life. Also says at the end of Avos in the sixth parak, Gedola Torah Shinotanis Chaim Laosel B'Olam Hazel Olam Haba. It gives us life in this world and the next. Right. So that's the idea over here. We have to make sure that we realize like we're being fish taken out of water and we don't have it. So that's the Indian over here. Now, the Gemara then the Ksubus on Kuf Dal, it says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he was on his deathbed, he raised the 10 fingers towards heaven and said, Rabbanu Shalom, it's known to you that I toiled and learned Torah with my 10 fingers, and I didn't enjoy any of the worldly benefits in this world, even with my pinky finger. Right? So this is a chiddush because the Gemara teaches us that Rebbe was wealthy. He was very, very wealthy. So Taisvus over there cites the Medrash, Tana de Beliyahu, that says that instead of a person davening, that the Torah should enter his body, should daven that the Ta'anug Ulam has the delicacies of this world don't enter into his body. What does this mean? What's the request of this tefillah? If he doesn't want that to enter into his body, so then how does Torah enter his body? What's one have to do with the other? Right? And if he doesn't want them to enter into his body, just don't eat them and then they won't enter. And if he eats them, so then he's davening in vain. So what's the pshat over here? So this could be understood by another very interesting medrash. At the beginning, in the Esther Rabbah, Yud Aleph, medrash says whenever it says Vayhi, it's talking about Lashon Sarah, talking about a hardship. Vayhi b'mei achaz. What's achaz? Achaz means hold, because he held up the doors in the shuls and the yeshivas, and he says if there are no talmidim chamim, he mean talmidim ein chachamim vein Torah. If there's no talmidim, then there's not going to be chachma and there's not going to be Torah. There's not going to be chachamim and there's not going to be Torah. This is similar to a king who sent his son over to basically a tutor, and the tutor disliked him, and he said, if I'm going to kill him, Hareni mischayev misal melech, the king will kill me. Ella, rather, he said, what am I going to do? Hareni moishich minikasav imenu v'humeis me'elav. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take his nurse from him, right? I'm going to prevent him from nursing. And then he will die on his own. He will die on his own. So the question is, it doesn't make any sense. If you're going to pull the nurse from him, you're essentially killing him. The answer is no. He's not going to pull the nurse from him. He's just not going to he's just going to feed him candy, candy, candy. Now, a child, if they only have candy, they're eventually going to die. So they're going to say, oh, he died not because the fellow, he wasn't hungry. He had no appetite. That's why he died. But he didn't realize that he really caused the death. That's what he said. So the idea is over here is that the Torah. So what's the pshat over here? What's the pshat over here? So the answer is the Torah is like a mother's milk, right? So what did Acha's disciples do? They fed us alternatives, and we felt satiated, the candy, so to say. But we can't survive on candy alone, and eventually it would have killed us. So that's the idea over here. The words of Torah enter into our minds, amazing. But do they enter into our bodies? If we're satiated with other things, with these delicacies, then they might not be able to enter. We can't be preoccupied with these other inyanim. The point over here is not that one shouldn't eat these delicacies, but that they shouldn't enter into his insides and take up a place of importance. Because Torah is water and we need to survive. That's the idea. This reminds me of something that we learned 9 years ago in Parshas Toldos, where there's a whole story over here about a Malami that was walking with the Talmud. He said, look at these leaves. Which leaves are more alive? The ones that are on the trees or the ones that are off the trees? And he said, the ones that are off the trees, they could go anywhere. He said, no, the ones that are off the trees are going to die. But the ones that are connected to the tree, they're still connected to their source of life, and they will live. Even though they might not look as free. They are. Because they will live longer. The ones off the tree, they're going to wither away soon. It's the same idea with the Eitz Chaim Nilam Achazikim Ba. We attach ourselves to it, then we'll live. If not, so then not. And also, that's the idea when it comes to the violin. The strings need to be very tight, but that tightness causes them to produce very nice sounds. Regarding one more ha'ara on the Gemara that we just quoted, Mordechai Gifter explains that why we compare it to fish out of water as opposed to any other animal without air. The answer is when fish are in water, they don't necessarily look like they're alive. When they come out of the water, it looks like they're more alive. They're wibbling and wobbling all over the way, but really they're dying. So it's the same exact thing. Sometimes the people in the base measures that are learning, they might not look as alive, but they definitely are. They have all the life. They're in the water. But the people outside, sometimes they look more alive, but they're really not. And they're gonna have a spiritual death. So that's definitely something to think about. So that's my little tie into his piece. I thought it was a very nice, deep idea. Okay, everyone should have a wonderful day.
Sure.
Yeah.